A millionaire leaves his wife hidden in his mansion out of shame and goes to a party with another woman. When he arrives there, he can't believe what he saw. Emma Anderson lived secluded in the Serenity Mansion, a place as vast as it was opulent, but to her it had become a prison. Her husband, Gabriel Johnson, had decided to keep her hidden from the world, justifying her absence with excuses of privacy and protection. However, the truth was harsher. Gabriel's shame over her humble roots and his obsession with constructing an impeccable image had led him to hide her. For Gabriel, Emma didn't fit into Austin's elite, and that perception alone was enough to confine her to anonymity. From his office in the city's tech hub, Gabriel meticulously crafted his public persona. He organized charitable events, mingled with politicians and businessmen, and was praised in every social column as the epitome of success. Yet in his perfectly orchestrated world, there was a glaring blind spot: his marriage. Emma's presence was absent from photos, events, and interviews. To those around Gabriel, she was little more than a rumor. While Gabriel's star shone brightly in social circles, Emma tried to fill her days with small routines. She tended a garden, read books Gabriel never noticed, and wrote in a journal she guarded fiercely. Although she had initially accepted the isolation under the promise it was temporary, the weight of years pressed heavily on her. Emma observed photos of events where her husband shone beside influential figures. She noted the perfect smile he directed at the flashes, but never shared with her. The reason for her confinement was clear. Protection was not for her sake. Gabriel was protecting himself. He feared that her simplicity and humanity would shatter his image of perfection. Meanwhile, in Austin's social circles, questions about Emma began to surface. While many admired Gabriel, they accepted his vague explanations about her absence. However, as his prominence in the business world grew, so did the speculations. "Who is his wife?" a journalist asked at a charity event, receiving a rehearsed smile and a generic response. "She prefers to stay out of the spotlight. She's a wonderful woman, but values her privacy." It was the same excuse he had repeated so often that it now flowed from his lips automatically. Yet the lack of tangible proof fueled rumors. Some claimed she was ill, others believed their relationship was a mere facade. Gabriel struggled to control the narrative, but it was becoming increasingly difficult. One evening, after returning from an event on Magnolia Avenue, Gabriel found Emma sitting by an open window, gazing at the distant lights of the lake. He avoided her gaze, as he often did. "How was it?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Gabriel sighed, removing his jacket. "As always, a success. I signed 2 major deals." Emma nodded with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. Both knew the conversation was a mere formality. The emotional distance between them grew more evident with time. Gabriel lived in a world of admiration, wealth, and recognition, while Emma existed in a realm of silence and solitude. What he didn't understand was that this silence was beginning to wear her down, and that the cracks in their marriage, invisible to him, were becoming deeper with each passing day. The Serenity Mansion was an imposing structure surrounded by meticulously maintained gardens and walls that rose like impenetrable barriers to prying eyes. It was the epitome of success and luxury. But to Emma Anderson, it symbolized her prison. Each morning, as sunlight filtered through the mansion's pristine glass windows, Emma would begin her routine, a sequence of activities repeated almost mechanically: watering the plants in the greenhouse, reading a book from the expansive library, and writing letters she would never send. Solitude enveloped her like a persistent fog. She had long since stopped expecting calls or visitors. Gabriel saw no reason for her to maintain contact with anyone beyond the household staff, who, though polite, kept their interactions strictly professional. Initially, Emma had fought against this imposed isolation. She had argued, cried, and tried to make Gabriel understand how suffocating her life had become. But her husband's words, spoken softly yet calculatedly, always managed to crush her resistance. "It's for your own good, Emma," he would say, his expression a mask of forced patience. "You're not prepared for what people would say about you. The world can be cruel." Over time, Emma began to believe those words. After all, wasn't it Gabriel who had rescued her from an uncertain future? Wasn't he the one who worked tirelessly to provide her with a life of comfort? The emotional manipulation took root, and Emma ceased questioning her circumstances. She convinced herself that remaining in the shadows was her contribution to her husband's success. But at night, when the mansion fell into deep silence, the true Emma emerged in the pages of her journal. In the intimacy of ink and paper, she expressed her frustrations, her yearning for freedom, and memories of a life when dreams had no limits. "Who am I now?" she wrote once, her trembling handwriting betraying her torment. The question echoed in her mind with a frequency that haunted her. To Gabriel, the mansion represented a safe haven, a place where Emma was shielded from a world he believed wouldn't understand her. But for her, it was a constant reminder of how far she was from the life she had once imagined. Every detail of the mansion's decor, from the luxurious chandeliers to the designer furniture, was a tangible testament to Gabriel's absolute control over his environment and over her. Yet despite everything, Emma found small moments of solace in the garden she had nurtured with her own hands. Amid the flowers and shrubs, she felt a sense of ownership. It was her refuge, a corner of the world that was truly hers. She spent hours working the soil, watching the plants flourish under her care. In that sanctuary, she felt a connection to something greater, something Gabriel couldn't dictate. But those brief escapes weren't enough to fill the void. The days dragged on in monotonous repetition, and the nights were even worse. Gabriel's absence was felt like a cold shadow, not because she missed his presence, but because every time he returned, he brought an emotional barrier that made her feel even lonelier. One evening, while Gabriel reviewed documents in his study, Emma gathered the courage to speak. "Gabriel," she began, her voice trembling but firm, "I need more. I need to feel like I'm still part of this world." Gabriel looked up, surprised by her tone. "You have everything you could ever want, Emma," he replied calmly, though his gaze was icy. "I don't understand why you insist on complicating things." The conversation ended there, as it always did. That night, Emma stared at the starlit sky from her bedroom window and sighed deeply. Somewhere beyond those walls lay a life that belonged to her, a life that now seemed unattainable. That night, Magnolia Avenue gleamed under the glow of dazzling lights, illuminating the avenue like a celestial spectacle. The newly inaugurated Innovatec headquarters, the crown jewel of Gabriel Johnson's empire, stood tall as a symbol of modernity and power. Every detail of the event had been meticulously planned: the red carpet, the exotic cocktails, and live jazz bands. Influential business people, celebrities, and journalists from the most exclusive publications gathered to celebrate not just the building, but the undeniable success of Gabriel Johnson. At the heart of it all, as always, stood Gabriel himself. His presence dominated the room, radiating confidence and charisma. Yet this evening, all eyes also turned to the woman at his side. Rachel Mitchell, dressed in a flawless black gown and exuding an air of confidence, walked beside Gabriel as if she had always been part of his life. Every smile, every word exchanged between them seemed calculated to elicit a specific reaction from the crowd. Rachel was not merely an image consultant, she was Gabriel's secret weapon, hired weeks earlier to solidify his narrative of perfection. She had studied every facet of Gabriel's life, his gestures, his speech, even the nuances of his body language. "You need to appear untouchable," she had told him during their first meeting. "People need to see you not just as successful, but as unassailable." As cameras flashed and reporters called out questions, the pair traversed the red carpet with precision. Most questions went unanswered, fueling speculation. Rumors swirled among the crowd. "Who is she?" some whispered. "A new partner? The woman replacing the elusive Emma?" Gabriel maintained his rehearsed smile, ignoring the speculations. Rachel's calculated gaze, however, spoke volumes while saying nothing at all. Inside the building, the celebration reached its peak. Gabriel ascended the main stage, taking the microphone with the confidence of someone who knew he controlled the narrative. "This new headquarters is not just a building," he declared, his voice echoing across the vast hall. "It's a testament to what we can achieve when we combine vision, hard work, and above all, innovation." The crowd erupted in applause as Gabriel raised a glass of champagne to toast the future. Meanwhile, at the Serenity Mansion, Emma sat alone by a small table near her bedroom window, glancing at the clock. The hands seemed to move exasperatingly slowly. She had tried to read, but the words on the page made no sense. Her mind wandered, imagining Gabriel surrounded by important people, laughing and celebrating, while she remained in the shadows. It was a sensation she knew all too well, but never stopped hurting. The weight in her chest grew heavier with each passing minute. Something felt different that night, not just Gabriel's absence, but the idea that, out in the world, someone else might be taking the place that had once been hers. Emma had overheard fragments of conversations from the household staff, rumors of a woman now accompanying her husband to public events. She tried to ignore them, but the uncertainty consumed her. At the event, Rachel missed no opportunity to demonstrate her social finesse. She guided conversations toward Gabriel's accomplishments, ensuring every word from her mouth bolstered his image. Gabriel, on the other hand, began to feel conflicted. Though he understood Rachel's strategic importance, he couldn't ignore a growing sense of unease. He had constructed this facade to protect his personal life. But now, the facade seemed dangerously close to becoming his reality. By the end of the evening, headlines flooded social media, speculating about Gabriel Johnson's mysterious companion. At the Serenity Mansion, Emma finally stopped glancing at the clock. Time had passed, and with it, a bit more of her hope. As she lay in bed that night, she wondered whether she would ever reclaim a place in Gabriel's life, or if she had already been completely forgotten. The routine at the Serenity Mansion was as monotonous as ever. Emma sat at her desk, attempting to distract herself with the mundane tasks that offered her a small reprieve from her isolation. She skimmed through emails, most of them irrelevant advertisements, until an unusual notification caught her attention. The subject line of the message read, "Join us to transform lives." Intrigued, Emma clicked on it. The sender was an organization called Helping Hands, a non-profit dedicated to supporting women in vulnerable situations. The letter, warm and persuasive in tone, invited Emma to participate in a volunteer program focused on providing training and emotional support to women in need. "If you can dedicate your time and passion, you can change lives," the closing line read. For the first time in years, Emma felt a spark of excitement. The message ignited something dormant within her, a flicker of hope buried beneath layers of resignation. She spent hours deliberating before finally deciding to respond. Under the pseudonym Andrea Ramirez, fearing her real name might trace back to Gabriel, she took a bold step. For the first time since her marriage, Emma made a decision without consulting Gabriel. Though small, it was an act of silent rebellion. Her heart pounded as she typed her reply. "I would like to participate in the program and contribute my skills to support other women." When she hit send, she felt a mix of relief and trepidation. She didn't know what to expect, but the mere act of applying filled her with a glimmer of freedom. A few days later, she received a response. Grace Taylor, the program coordinator, expressed gratitude for her interest and proposed a meeting to discuss her involvement further. Emma could hardly believe it. Her mind raced with possibilities she hadn't dared to consider in years. Could she regain a sense of purpose? Escape the emotional confinement of her life? She knew that any move would have to be discreet. Gabriel must not find out. On the day of her video call with Grace, Emma retreated to her room, claiming she needed privacy to read. She adjusted the camera to show only a neutral background and steadied her nerves as Grace appeared on the screen, her warm smile immediately putting Emma at ease. The conversation flowed naturally. Grace asked about her interest in volunteering and her skills. Emma spoke with a confidence that surprised even herself, avoiding details about her true circumstances, but conveying her genuine desire to make a difference. At the end of the call, Grace presented an unexpected proposal. "Andrea, I believe you have the ideal profile for something more than a volunteer role. We'd like to offer you a paid position as a project coordinator. This job could make a significant impact, not only for the women we help, but for you as well." Emma felt her breath leave her body. For a moment, she was speechless. The offer represented more than employment. It was a door to a different life, one where she could rebuild her identity far from Gabriel's shadow. That night, as Emma paced through the garden under a starlit sky, she wrestled with her thoughts. Accepting the job meant risking a confrontation with Gabriel, his rules, and his control. But rejecting it would mean forfeiting her first real chance to reclaim her autonomy. By morning, her decision was made. She replied to Grace's email, accepting the offer. As she pressed send, her stomach churned with anxiety, but a faint glimmer of hope also stirred within her. For the first time in years, she was ready to face the consequences. The inauguration of Innovatec's new headquarters continued in full swing, with guests captivated by the grandeur of the event. Champagne glasses clinked amidst lively conversations, as Gabriel Johnson's name was repeated reverently, synonymous with success. Among the attendees was Henry Smith, an influential investor known as much for his wealth as for his lack of discretion when alcohol was involved. Surrounded by empty glasses, Henry stumbled toward Gabriel and Rachel, who maintained her strategic position beside him, expertly managing the social dynamics. "Gabriel!" Henry bellowed, his tone exaggerated and drawing attention from nearby guests. "You're a genius, you know that? But there's something I've always wondered." Gabriel, accustomed to handling awkward comments, forced a smile and watched as Henry raised his glass, clearly preparing for an indiscretion. "Your wife, Emma, does she even exist? We never see her, or are you hiding something?" The room seemed to freeze for a moment, Henry's words hanging in the air like a dense cloud of smoke. Gabriel felt his blood boil, but maintained his composure. Rachel quickly intervened, letting out a practiced laugh to diffuse the tension. "Henry, I think you've had too much champagne," she said lightly. But Henry wasn't deterred. "Oh, come on. I'm not the only one wondering. Why doesn't he ever bring his wife to these events? If I had a wife, I'd show her off every single day." Gabriel gritted his teeth as curious glances turned toward him. "Emma prefers a quiet, private life," he replied firmly, though his tone betrayed his discomfort. "Not everyone enjoys these kinds of gatherings." It was a line he had repeated countless times, yet it felt more hollow than ever. Henry chuckled, his laughter filled with mockery. "Private, you say? Well, if you insist. But you know how us businessmen are. We're always looking for the truth." With one final guffaw, Henry staggered off to another conversation, leaving a trail of whispers in his wake. The murmurs rippled through the room like wildfire, ranging from genuine curiosity to wild speculation. Rachel, blending irritation with professionalism, leaned in to Gabriel. "We can manage this," she whispered. "Stay visible, smile, and act like nothing happened." But Gabriel barely registered her words. His mind was a storm of chaos. For the first time, he felt the control he so valued slipping away. The next day, social media and tabloids seized on the incident. Headlines like, "Where is Gabriel Johnson's mysterious wife?" and "The enigma of Emma the absent woman" dominated the news. Some articles speculated about Gabriel's relationship with Rachel, while others suggested marital problems. For Gabriel, every line was a blow to his carefully constructed reputation. Back at the Serenity Mansion, the atmosphere was tense. Gabriel entered the main hall with a grim expression, finding Emma sitting calmly, reading, oblivious to the media frenzy unfolding outside. Without preamble, Gabriel's voice thundered through the room. "Do you have any idea what's happening? Do you know the position you've put me in?" Emma looked up, startled. "What have I done, Gabriel?" "Your absence," he barked. "I always have to justify you, invent excuses, and now, thanks to you, my image is at risk. Everything I've built could collapse." Emma stared at him, incredulous. For the first time, she felt unable to remain silent. "My fault?" she replied, her voice rising. "Do you really think this is my fault? You're the one who decided I should stay locked up here, far from everything. You're the one who built this lie, Gabriel. Don't blame me for something I had no choice in." Gabriel stood, stunned by her defiance. He had never heard Emma speak to him with such firmness. But instead of reflecting, he shook his head and stormed out of the room, leaving an oppressive silence in his wake. Dinner at the Serenity Mansion was steeped in an uncomfortable silence. Emma had prepared a simple yet meticulously crafted menu, as she always did on the rare occasions they shared a meal. Gabriel, engrossed in his phone, barely looked up. Emma, however, had something on her mind. As she poured herself a glass of water, she took a deep breath and decided to speak. "I've made a decision," she said, her voice steady but firm. Gabriel responded with a distracted, "Uh-huh," not lifting his eyes from the screen. But her next words made him freeze. "I've accepted a job." The words landed like a bombshell in the room. Gabriel slowly set his phone down, disbelief etched across his face. "What did you say?" he asked, incredulity and irritation blending in his tone. "I've accepted a position with an organization called Helping Hands," Emma repeated, holding his gaze. "I start next week." The silence that followed was so heavy it seemed to echo in the grand dining room. Gabriel, usually so eloquent and composed, appeared momentarily at a loss for words. Finally, he leaned forward, placing his fork on the plate with a deliberate clink. "A job? You?" he said, his voice dripping with disdain. "What were you thinking, Emma? Do you honestly believe you can just integrate into the outside world? You don't understand how things work. It's naive." Every word carried a thinly veiled contempt, his incredulity barely contained. Emma, however, didn't waver. She had expected this reaction and prepared herself for it. "I didn't ask for your permission, Gabriel. I don't need it," she said, her tone calm but resolute. "This is my life, and I'm tired of sitting here, doing nothing. This job gives me the chance to reclaim a part of myself." Her words carried a weight that shook the controlled environment Gabriel had spent years building. "Reclaim a part of yourself?" he repeated, his voice rising. "Everything you have, Emma, is because of me. I've given you this life, this house, this security, and now you want to throw it all away to play at being useful." Emma's face remained serene, though her eyes gleamed with a determination Gabriel hadn't seen in years, perhaps ever. "I'm not playing, Gabriel," she said. "For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm doing something that makes sense, and I'm not going to change my mind. This isn't up for negotiation." The tension between them was palpable. Gabriel rose from the table and began pacing, a caged lion wrestling with thoughts that raced through his mind. He had always been in control, always able to mold Emma to his will. But now he saw something in her that he couldn't recognize, and it terrified him. "You're chasing a fantasy, Emma," he said, his tone sharp. "The world isn't what you think it is. It will destroy you out there." Emma stood as well, meeting his gaze directly. "Worse than this, Gabriel?" she asked, her voice soft but cutting. "At least out there, I'll have a voice, a reason to get up every morning. If you can't understand that, I'm sorry, but I won't stop." With that, she picked up her plate and carried it to the kitchen, leaving Gabriel alone in the dining room. That night, Emma slept deeply for the first time in years, her mind at peace after making a decision that felt like a turning point in her life. Gabriel, however, lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling. Emma's words echoed in his mind, each one striking like a deafening drumbeat. For the first time, he faced the possibility of losing the absolute control he had always held over her, and he didn't know how to handle it. As the first rays of sunlight began to illuminate Austin, Emma stepped out of a taxi in front of a modest building on a quiet, tree-lined street. The plaque next to the door read "Helping Hands," written in simple but meaningful letters. In stark contrast to the cold, opulent luxury of the Serenity Mansion, this place radiated warmth and a sense of belonging. Emma took a deep breath before stepping inside, feeling a mixture of nervousness and excitement. This was her first step towards something she had long desired: freedom. Upon entering, the scent of freshly brewed coffee and the faint rustle of papers filled the air. Grace Taylor, the program coordinator, greeted her with a warm smile and a firm handshake that exuded confidence. "Andrea, welcome," Grace said, using the pseudonym Emma had chosen. "We're thrilled to have you join us." Emma nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat as she tried to process the sincerity in Grace's words. Grace guided her through the modest but lively facility. The walls were adorned with photographs of smiling women participating in workshops and community activities. Each image seemed to tell a story of resilience and hope. "Here, we believe in the power of second chances," Grace explained as they walked. "Everyone who comes through these doors has something valuable to contribute, even if they don't realize it yet." Initially, Emma felt out of place. She was accustomed to an environment where her opinions didn't matter and where decisions were made without consulting her. But in this space, everything was different. As she met her new colleagues, Emma noticed something extraordinary about them: a vibrant energy and a passion for making a difference that stood in stark contrast to the superficiality of the events and parties Gabriel frequented. During an introductory meeting, Grace introduced Emma to the team. Women of all ages and backgrounds shared anecdotes about their work with Helping Hands. One volunteer recounted a workshop in a rural community where women had learned to manage a small business. Another described how they had provided legal support to a single mother in a vulnerable situation. Each story was a testament to courage and strength, and they deeply moved Emma. When it was her turn to speak, she hesitated. She wasn't sure what to say or what she could bring to a place filled with such inspiring individuals. But as she looked at the encouraging faces around her, she found her voice. "I don't have experience in this," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "But I want to learn. I want to help other women find their path, just as I hope to find mine." Her simple yet honest confession was met with applause and smiles. For the first time in years, Emma felt that her words mattered, that she had a place where she could be heard. Throughout the day, Emma began to adapt. Grace assigned her simple tasks, like reviewing documents and preparing materials for an upcoming event. As she worked, she listened to snippets of conversations about the challenges faced by the communities the organization supported. She felt humbled, yet inspired. For the first time in a long while, she was no longer invisible. At the end of the day, Grace approached Emma with a cup of coffee in hand. "You did great today, Andrea," she said. "I hope you're starting to feel at home here. This place is as much yours as anyone else's." Emma smiled, gratitude welling up inside her. "Thank you, Grace. You have no idea how much this means to me." That evening, when Emma returned to the mansion, she carried a new light in her eyes. As she strolled through the garden, clutching a bag filled with documents to review, the weight in her chest felt lighter. For the first time in years, she felt that something in her life was beginning to change, and this time, she was in control. The weeks flew by as Emma adjusted to her new role at Helping Hands. Her days now had a sense of purpose, filled with activities that challenged and fulfilled her. She quickly became an integral part of the team, earning the trust of Grace and the respect of her colleagues. Her natural empathy and ability to listen made her a confidant for the women who came to the organization seeking support. What started as simple administrative tasks soon expanded into larger responsibilities. Emma began organizing workshops, coordinating volunteers, and even planning strategies to expand the reach of their programs. Her transformation didn't go unnoticed. In the office, her colleagues frequently sought her advice and ideas. "Andrea has a special way of connecting with people," one team member remarked during a meeting. "She knows how to make them feel heard." Those words, simple yet heartfelt, stirred something within Emma that she hadn't felt in years: pride in herself. She began to see the tangible results of her efforts, achievements that were hers alone and unconnected to Gabriel's world of appearances. With each passing day, Emma's confidence grew. Her posture became more assured, her voice more commanding, and her ideas more clearly expressed. Grace noticed the change and wasted no time assigning her even greater responsibilities. "I think you're ready to lead this next project," Grace told her one day, handing her a folder filled with details about a pilot program for a rural community. Emma hesitated only briefly before accepting. Her enthusiasm overshadowed the remnants of her former doubts. At home, the changes in Emma were subtle but undeniable. She no longer avoided Gabriel's gaze or rushed to justify her actions. Though he didn't say much, it was clear that he had noticed. It wasn't just the way she dressed, choosing brighter colors and more thoughtful details, but the way she carried herself. She exuded a calm confidence that hadn't been there before. Gabriel, on the other hand, was grappling with increasing pressure in his professional life. A new competitor had entered the market, threatening Innovatec's position. The numbers were troubling, and investors were beginning to question his decisions. Each day, Gabriel returned home more frustrated, seeking solace in the tranquility of the mansion. But instead of the passive and obedient Emma he once knew, he found a woman who seemed to be thriving in a world of her own. One evening, as he reviewed documents in his study, Gabriel paused when he heard Emma laughing in the garden. He looked out the window and saw her on the phone, her face lit up with genuine happiness. It was a moment that disarmed him. He couldn't remember the last time he had seen her laugh like that, and it unsettled him that he didn't know what was making her so happy. The emotional distance between them became increasingly apparent. Gabriel tried to regain control through passive-aggressive comments, but Emma refused to take the bait. She either ignored him or responded with a calmness that only deepened his frustration. Gabriel was no longer dealing with the Emma he had molded to fit his carefully constructed world. This Emma didn't seek his approval or fear his judgment. At Helping Hands, Emma's reputation continued to grow. During a weekly meeting, Grace highlighted her contributions to a recent workshop. "Andrea has proven to be a natural leader," Grace said in front of the entire team. Emma felt tears welling up, but this time they weren't from sadness. They were from gratitude. She had found a sense of purpose that no one could take away. That evening, back at the mansion, Emma paused in front of the large mirror in the entryway. She studied her reflection, searching for the woman she had been for so many years. But what she saw was someone entirely new, a person who was finally beginning to know and value herself. Rumors spread like wildfire through Austin's social circles. What had started as curiosity about Gabriel Johnson's professional relationship with Rachel Mitchell quickly evolved into the city's hottest topic. Whispers at private gatherings and public events fueled speculation that their connection went beyond business. Blogs and magazines highlighted carefully staged photos of the two at recent events, strategically angled to hint at a deeper bond. The magnate without a wife and his ever-present consultant, one article proclaimed, suggesting Emma was nothing more than a symbolic figure, while Rachel played the role of Gabriel's true partner. For Gabriel, what had begun as a calculated move to bolster his public image was now backfiring. Sitting in his study, he scanned the week's headlines, his irritation growing with each passing line. He had always been meticulous about maintaining appearances, yet everything now seemed to be slipping out of his control. He shut his laptop with a forceful snap, frustrated beyond words. In hindsight, bringing Rachel into his public life had been a double-edged sword. She had been effective, undeniably so, but her presence had grown beyond what he had anticipated. Rachel was not just an image consultant, she was an ambitious and charismatic woman who played her own game. Tensions came to a head during a meeting at Innovatec's main office. Gabriel decided to confront Rachel directly about the rumors. "This needs to stop," he said coldly, his voice sharp and controlled. "I can't afford for my name to be associated with scandals. You, of all people, should understand that." Rachel raised an eyebrow, setting her coffee cup down with deliberate composure. "And what did you expect, Gabriel?" she countered. "You put me in the center of everything, assured me this was part of the plan, and now you're blaming me for the consequences?" Her tone was calm, but carried an undercurrent of defiance. Gabriel's jaw tightened. "Your role was clear, Rachel. Project an image, maintain appearances, nothing more." Rachel let out a dry laugh. "Nothing more? I've played this game with you for months, letting you use me as another piece in your chessboard. But there are limits, Gabriel. Did you think I'd just take the criticisms and speculations without defending myself?" The room grew tense, the air thick with unspoken challenges. "This is a distraction," Gabriel said, struggling to regain control. "If we keep feeding into this narrative, everything we've built could fall apart." Rachel's gaze hardened. "What we've built, Gabriel, also depends on me. Don't forget that." Her final words carried a weight that silenced him momentarily. Then, as if twisting the knife, she added, "You know what the real problem is. People are also asking about Emma. Everyone's wondering how real your marriage is." Her statement hit Gabriel like a punch to the gut. He had always controlled the narrative of his life, but now that narrative was unraveling. Meanwhile, the media continued to intensify the crisis. Social columns speculated about a growing triangle involving Gabriel, Rachel, and the ever-absent Emma. Some articles suggested Rachel's presence was deliberate, while others questioned whether Gabriel's marriage was even authentic. Gabriel felt like he was losing control, not just over his public image, but over every aspect of his life. Rachel had become both a threat and an ally, someone he couldn't confront without risking unpredictable consequences. At the same time, Emma's distant yet increasingly visible figure in public discourse haunted him. Emma, oblivious to the chaos in Gabriel's professional world, remained focused on her work at Helping Hands. Her days were filled with purpose, and for the first time in years, she felt like she was building something meaningful. Little did she know, her absence was now at the center of a storm she hadn't anticipated. The day began like any other for Emma at Helping Hands. She sifted through documents and organized materials for an upcoming workshop, completely unaware that this ordinary routine would mark a turning point in her life. Around midday, Grace approached her desk with an envelope in hand, her expression warm but tinged with excitement. "Andrea, do you have a moment?" Grace asked. Intrigued, Emma followed Grace into the meeting room. Once inside, Grace placed the envelope on the table in front of her. "This is for you," Grace said. Take your time to read it and think it over. With a mix of curiosity and apprehension, Emma opened the envelope. Inside was a formal offer letter proposing that she lead a new project, the development of a comprehensive training program for women in vulnerable communities. Her heart raced as she read the details. It was an ambitious initiative, one that carried significant responsibilities. "What do you think?" Grace asked, leaning forward slightly. Emma lifted her gaze, her emotions a whirlwind of excitement and doubt. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for this," she admitted quietly. Grace smiled reassuringly. "Andrea, not only are you the right person, but you're also the best person for this. Your dedication, your empathy, and your connection with the women we help make you perfect for this role." That afternoon, as Emma walked home, the proposal weighed heavily on her mind. The project represented a remarkable opportunity, but it also came with immense responsibility. Her mind swirled with questions. Could she truly lead such an important initiative? Could she make critical decisions when, for so many years, her voice had been silenced? Over the following days, her doubts lingered, but the unwavering support of her colleagues helped ease her fears. During a lunch break, one of her co-workers, Sarah, offered a perspective that struck a chord. "When you speak, people listen, Andrea," Sarah said. "You inspire confidence because they see that you've lived through what many of them are facing. That's not something you can learn. It's something you carry with you." Grace also reminded Emma of an essential truth. Leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about being willing to learn and guide by example. One evening, as she poured her thoughts into her journal, Emma made her decision. "I accept this challenge," she wrote, the boldness of her pen strokes reflecting her resolve. The next day, she informed Grace of her choice. The office erupted in celebration. "We knew you'd say yes," Sarah said, embracing her enthusiastically. Though still nervous, Emma felt a spark of pride. For the first time in a long while, she was taking control of her destiny. The initial days of her leadership role were intense. Emma met with various teams, listening to their ideas and addressing their concerns. She quickly discovered that her strength didn't lie in giving orders, but in inspiring others. She shared parts of her personal story with the women in the program, showing them that she understood their struggles. Her honesty and vulnerability resonated deeply, motivating the group. "If she can overcome so much, why can't we?" one woman remarked during a session. As the project progressed, the first results began to emerge. The pilot workshops were a resounding success, drawing more participants than expected. Women shared stories of how the training programs were transforming their lives, from acquiring practical skills to regaining their sense of self-worth. Emma attended every session, not just as a leader, but as one of them. Her presence created an atmosphere of trust and encouragement, allowing the program to thrive. Back at the Serenity Mansion, Gabriel began to feel the weight of solitude pressing down on him. The once comforting silence of the sprawling estate had turned into a relentless reminder of emptiness. One evening, while sitting in his study, surrounded by awards and photos that once symbolized success, Gabriel found himself staring at an old photo album. The images captured moments from his early years with Emma, their wedding, spontaneous trips taken on a tight budget, and the genuine smiles they once shared. Before his relentless ambition took over, there was a time when their connection felt real and untainted. Closing the album with a heavy sigh, Gabriel felt a pang of guilt. He had spent years isolating Emma, not to protect her, but to protect himself, his own insecurities and fear of being exposed for who he truly was. That night, while browsing news on his tablet, an article caught his eye. Helping Hands Transforms Lives under the leadership of Andrea Ramirez. The name didn't strike him, but the accompanying photo left him breathless. It was Emma, standing confidently among a group of women who looked at her with admiration. Gabriel read the article in its entirety, learning about her empathy, her leadership, and the transformative impact of her work. For the first time, he felt a pride he had never known, mingled with a sharp sense of regret. He had never truly seen Emma for who she was. The realization haunted him as he paced through the empty mansion, recalling every moment he had dismissed her, every time he had kept her in the shadows. "What kind of man am I?" he murmured, his voice heavy with self-reproach. Compelled by an unfamiliar impulse, Gabriel decided to visit Helping Hands the following day. He didn't know exactly what he hoped to achieve, but he needed to understand the world in which Emma had seemingly flourished. The following morning, Gabriel arrived early at the Helping Hands office, parking his car at a discreet distance to avoid drawing attention. From the outside, he could hear the faint sounds of animated voices and laughter coming from within. Peering through a window, Gabriel spotted Emma in a meeting room. She stood confidently at the front, speaking to a group of women and volunteers. Her voice, though inaudible from where he stood, was clearly captivating. She gestured with assured movements, her body language exuding passion and clarity. For a moment, Gabriel felt as if he were seeing Emma for the first time. This was not the timid woman confined to the shadows of the Serenity Mansion. This, Emma was composed, self-assured, and surrounded by people who respected her. Her audience hung on to her every word, occasionally nodding or jotting down notes. Laughter and smiles punctuated her presentation, lightening the atmosphere as she made thoughtful remarks. Gabriel felt a pang of pride mixed with an ache of regret. How had he failed to recognize the strength and brilliance in her all these years? After the meeting ended, the women approached Emma, expressing their gratitude and seeking her guidance. Gabriel took the opportunity to walk around the office, observing the projects displayed on bulletin boards. The walls were lined with photographs of women smiling during workshops, posters with empowering messages, and charts detailing the progress of various programs. The atmosphere was alive with purpose, something that felt foreign to the cold and isolated grandeur of his mansion. Nearby, Gabriel overheard a conversation between two women. "She's incredible, isn't she?" one said, gesturing toward Emma. The other nodded. "She's so inspiring. Seeing her lead like this makes me believe I can do it too." The words resonated deeply with Gabriel. He had spent so much time dismissing Emma's capabilities that he had never considered what she might achieve if given the chance. As the day wore on, Gabriel lingered outside the building, watching as Emma continued her work. By late afternoon, when she began gathering her belongings to leave, he finally gathered the courage to approach her. "Emma," he called softly as she exited the building. She stopped, startled by his presence. Her expression quickly shifted from surprise to guarded curiosity. "What are you doing here, Gabriel?" she asked, her tone neutral but laced with caution. Gabriel hesitated before answering. "I wanted to see this world of yours, to understand what you've been doing. I didn't realize—" He trailed off, his voice heavy with emotion. Emma crossed her arms, watching him intently. "Didn't realize what?" "That you were capable of all this," Gabriel admitted, motioning to the building behind her. "I've been a fool, Emma. I kept you hidden not because of who you are, but because of what I was afraid you'd show the world about me." Emma's expression softened slightly, though she remained composed. "And what exactly are you afraid of, Gabriel?" Gabriel looked away for a moment, gathering his thoughts. "That your light would reveal my flaws. I built this image of perfection, and I was terrified of anything that might disrupt it. But now I see that I've only been hiding from myself." Emma took a deep breath, letting his words sink in. "I appreciate your honesty, Gabriel," she said finally. "But words aren't enough. I've rebuilt myself from the shadows you put me in, and I'm not going back." If you want to change, you'll have to show me. Her tone was firm but not unkind. It was the voice of someone who had reclaimed her strength and wouldn't let it be taken from her again. Gabriel nodded, understanding the weight of her response. "I will, Emma," he said quietly. "I promise to respect your space and to earn your trust again, even if it means staying in the background." Emma didn't reply immediately. She gave him a small nod, acknowledging his words, but leaving no room for misinterpretation. Her journey was now her own, and any reconciliation would be on equal terms. That evening, Gabriel drove back to the Serenity Mansion with a heavy heart. He replayed Emma's words in his mind, each one a reminder of how much he had to change. For the first time, he felt not just regret, but a genuine desire to grow into someone worthy of the woman she had become. One afternoon, while Emma was reviewing proposals for a new workshop at the Helping Hands office, she received an unexpected visitor. Gabriel had requested a meeting, and despite her initial hesitation, she agreed to see him. He arrived punctually, a stark contrast to the imposing figure she remembered. This time, his posture carried a humility that surprised her. He entered the meeting room carrying a portfolio, his expression serious but not overbearing. "Emma," he began, placing the portfolio on the table, "I know I've made countless mistakes, but I want to prove to you that I'm willing to change." She observed him cautiously as he opened the folder to reveal a detailed plan. "I've reviewed the financial structure of Helping Hands," Gabriel continued, "and I believe I can help. This plan includes a significant donation that could fund new programs, expand your reach, and open additional centers." Emma listened in silence, her expression unreadable. When Gabriel finished, she leaned forward, her eyes locking onto his. "I appreciate your generosity," she said, her voice firm but measured. "But let me be clear. Helping Hands is not a tool for you to cleanse your conscience or a means for you to impose control. If you want to help, it must be on our terms, respecting our autonomy and mine." Her response caught Gabriel off guard, but he nodded, a mix of respect and resignation on his face. "I understand," he replied. "This isn't about control, Emma. It's about supporting something I believe in, something you've built." Their collaboration began cautiously. Emma, fiercely protective of her independence, carefully monitored Gabriel's involvement in the organization. Meanwhile, Gabriel adapted to a role he was unaccustomed to, one of support rather than command. During strategy meetings, he offered ideas without imposing them, a significant departure from his usual approach. One day, when the team discussed a new program, Gabriel suggested a strategy based on his business experience. Though skeptical at first, Emma acknowledged its merit and allowed the proposal to move forward. Over the weeks, Gabriel's small but consistent efforts began to make a difference. He arrived on time to meetings, actively listened to the challenges the organization faced, and showed genuine interest in the women's stories. At a community event, Gabriel stepped outside his comfort zone, joining participants in a painting activity. Initially, the women regarded him with skepticism, wary of his polished image. But as he let go of his facade and interacted sincerely, their defenses softened. For Emma, these changes were encouraging, but she remained steadfast in her boundaries. She knew that any reconciliation between them would have to be built on mutual respect and equality. One evening, as they worked late in the office, reviewing reports together, Emma decided to address the matter directly. "I see the effort you're making, Gabriel, and I appreciate it," she said, without looking up from the papers. "But I need you to understand something. This project, my life, it's not about you. I'm willing to collaborate with you, but my independence is non-negotiable." Gabriel paused, her words sinking in. Then, after a moment of silence, he replied, "I know. And that's what I admire most about you, Emma. I'll never try to take away what you've built. I only hope I can be a part of it if you'll let me." His response marked a turning point. Though their past wounds hadn't fully healed, a new foundation was beginning to take shape, one rooted in equality, not dominance. Over time, Gabriel's actions spoke louder than his words. Emma saw his commitment not through grand gestures, but in the small, consistent ways he supported her vision without overshadowing it. At the end of a long day, as they left the office together, Gabriel offered her a rare smile. "We're making progress," he said. Emma nodded. "Yes, but the road is long. Still, this time, I think we're finally walking it together." The sound of typing echoed through the Helping Hands office as Emma and her team worked tirelessly to prepare for an event that could redefine the organization's trajectory. They had been invited to a global conference in Mexico City, a forum where leaders and representatives of organizations worldwide would gather to share achievements and foster collaborations. For Emma, this was an invaluable opportunity to showcase the impact of Helping Hands and expand its mission. The preparation was intense, with every detail scrutinized, from the data presented in their materials to the images and testimonials that illustrated their work. "This is our chance to show the world what we do," Emma reminded her team, her determination infectious. On the day of the conference, Emma and her colleagues arrived at an imposing hotel in Mexico City, its elegant decor reflecting the significance of the event. Despite her initial intimidation, Emma remained focused. She reminded herself that she belonged there, not just as a participant, but as a leader with a story and a vision. Gabriel accompanied her as promised, but stayed in the background, respecting her autonomy. From the sidelines, he watched as Emma engaged with other representatives, her confidence shining in every conversation. For the first time, Gabriel fully grasped that Emma no longer needed him to navigate the world. She was thriving on her own terms. When the moment for her presentation arrived, Emma stepped onto the stage, the spotlight casting her in a warm glow. Holding the microphone firmly, she took a deep breath and began. "A few years ago, I never would have imagined standing here," she said, her voice steady yet charged with emotion. Emma recounted the origins of Helping Hands, the challenges they faced, and the lives transformed by their efforts. She shared stories of women who had regained hope and strength through the organization's programs. "We are not just recipients of help," she emphasized. "We are agents of change, capable of building a better future for ourselves and those around us." Her words resonated deeply, and when she finished, the room erupted in applause. Many in the audience stood, moved by her sincerity and the tangible impact of her work. Backstage, Gabriel waited silently. When Emma approached, still radiant from the crowd's response, he looked at her with newfound admiration. "You were incredible," he said simply, his voice filled with genuine pride. Emma smiled, her gratitude evident. For once, Gabriel's presence didn't overshadow her, it supported her, and she appreciated his restraint. On the journey back to Serenity, the atmosphere in the car was calm, yet filled with a quiet sense of accomplishment. But as they pulled up to the mansion, Emma noticed something unusual. The garden was illuminated by soft, twinkling lights, and faint murmurs of voices drifted from inside the house. She turned to Gabriel, her expression a mix of curiosity and suspicion. "What's going on?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. Gabriel's lips curled into a small, enigmatic smile. "You'll see," he said, offering his arm to guide her inside. When they entered the mansion, Emma was stunned. The main hall had been transformed into a vibrant celebration. Decorations in the colors of Helping Hands adorned the space, and photos of the women the organization had supported were displayed prominently. Quotes and stories of resilience were interspersed among the images, giving the room a powerful and emotional energy. The attendees were a mix of journalists, local business leaders, and most importantly, women from Helping Hands who had been directly impacted by its programs. When they saw Emma, a wave of applause erupted, filling the hall with warmth and recognition. Emma brought a hand to her chest, visibly moved as she processed the moment. Gabriel stepped onto a small platform, microphone in hand, and addressed the room. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his usual confidence tempered by a tone of sincerity. "This event is a tribute to the extraordinary work of Helping Hands and the incredible leadership of one woman, Emma Anderson. This is your moment." He extended a hand toward her, inviting her to join him. The applause swelled as Emma walked to the platform, still overwhelmed but composed. Taking the microphone, she glanced at Gabriel briefly before addressing the crowd. "Thank you," she began, her voice trembling slightly before steadying. "Thank you to all of you, but especially to the women who make Helping Hands possible. This isn't just my achievement, it belongs to all of us." Throughout the evening, attendees shared personal stories of how the organization had transformed their lives. The journalists captured every moment, ensuring the impact of the event would resonate beyond the mansion's walls. As the night drew to a close, Gabriel took the microphone one last time. His tone was softer, more personal. "There's something I've needed to say for a long time," he began, looking directly at Emma. "I am incredibly proud of you, not just for what you've accomplished with Helping Hands, but for the person you've become, strong, independent, and an inspiration to everyone here, myself included." His words drew applause and a few tears from the crowd. Emma, though moved, met his gaze with calm determination. Later that evening, as the guests departed and the lights dimmed, Emma turned to Gabriel. "This was amazing," she said. "I didn't know you were capable of something like this." Gabriel gave her a small, humble smile. "I wanted you to know that I believe in you, Emma, and I'm ready to do whatever it takes to support you." Emma studied him for a moment before replying, her tone firm but kind. "Gabriel, I want us to move forward, but only as equals. I won't let my life be defined by someone else ever again." Gabriel nodded, his expression one of understanding and acceptance. "I promise," he said. "No more decisions for you, no more shadows. This is a new beginning for both of us." Under Emma's leadership, Helping Hands reached unprecedented heights. What had once been a small local initiative grew into a nationally recognized organization, with branches opening across different regions of Mexico. Every workshop, program, and conference brought tangible benefits to the communities they served, spreading hope and resources to those most in need. For Emma, this wasn't just a professional accomplishment. It was proof that she had found her purpose. Her days were packed with challenges, but the satisfaction she felt outweighed the exhaustion. Her ability to connect with people, listen to their stories, and provide practical solutions became the heart of the organization's success. The media continued to highlight her work, and Helping Hands secured strategic partnerships that ensured the sustainability of its projects. Meanwhile, Gabriel began carving out his own path in this new chapter of his life. Inspired by Emma's transformation and his own desire to make a difference, he launched a social initiative called Raíces Futuras. The foundation aimed to support young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds by providing mentorship, training, and seed funding for innovative projects. For Gabriel, Raíces Futuras became more than just a philanthropic endeavor. It was a chance to reconnect with his own origins and rediscover his passion for innovation. Although their professional lives now took separate directions, Emma and Gabriel remained connected through shared values and mutual respect. They found time to support one another, whether attending an event for Helping Hands or collaborating on a community project between their organizations. One of the year's most significant moments came with the release of Emma's book, Renacer desde las Sombras, Rebirth from the Shadows. The memoir chronicled her personal journey and the growth of Helping Hands. Written in a candid and heartfelt tone, Emma shared how she had faced her fears, overcome obstacles, and discovered her voice in a world that once sought to silence her. The book quickly became a bestseller, receiving critical acclaim and resonating deeply with readers, especially women in similar circumstances. Beyond its literary impact, the book symbolized hope and empowerment for those striving to reclaim their lives. At the launch event, surrounded by friends, colleagues, and women who had been part of Helping Hands' journey, Emma addressed the audience with gratitude and humility. "This book isn't just my story," she said, holding up the cover. "It's the story of every woman who taught me what resilience and strength truly mean. And it's a reminder that we all have the power to rebuild ourselves." That evening, as Emma and Gabriel left the event together, he reached for her hand. "I'm proud of you," he said, his voice soft yet sincere. "Not just for what you've achieved, but for who you are." Emma turned to him, her expression calm but filled with emotion. "And I'm proud of us," she replied, "because we finally learned how to walk side by side without losing ourselves." In the months that followed, Emma and Gabriel continued building their respective legacies, knowing they could count on each other without fear of being overshadowed. Collaborations between Helping Hands and Races Futuras flourished, amplifying their impact and inspiring others to follow their example. Their journey wasn't without challenges, but they approached each one as equals, together but independent. The soft glow of Emma's desk lamp illuminated the room as she reviewed notes for an upcoming conference. Outside, the mansion lay in silence, but within her, a sense of fulfillment coursed through her veins. Helping Hands had grown beyond what she had ever imagined, and the possibilities ahead seemed limitless. Meanwhile, Gabriel was immersed in his work with Races Futuras. The foundation was thriving, its programs offering young entrepreneurs the tools they needed to break free from cycles of poverty. For Gabriel, each success story brought a sense of pride he hadn't felt in years. It was no longer about appearances or control, it was about creating meaningful change. Despite their busy lives, Emma and Gabriel found ways to support one another. Their interactions, once dominated by conflict and imbalance, now reflected mutual understanding and admiration. One evening, as they sat in the garden, Emma spoke with a thoughtful expression. "I've been thinking about the women who inspired me to write the book," she said, glancing at the flowers she had planted years ago. "So many of them taught me lessons I'll never forget. But what if we could do more? What if Helping Hands could create a program to empower them as leaders in their own communities?" Gabriel nodded, intrigued. "That's an incredible idea. It would amplify the impact they're already making." The discussion grew animated as they brainstormed ideas for the new initiative. Their collaboration no longer felt like a clash of egos, but a seamless blend of perspectives, each complementing the other. Days turned into weeks as Emma developed the program, drawing on Gabriel's input for logistical advice. They named it Liderazgo con Propósito, Leadership with Purpose, a project designed to equip women with the skills and resources to lead transformative efforts in their own regions. The first round of workshops launched with overwhelming success. Women from across the country shared their stories of overcoming adversity, inspiring others to do the same. The ripple effect of Helping Hands became evident, with community leaders emerging from every corner, each determined to foster change. At the heart of the movement was Emma, whose unwavering determination set the tone for everything Helping Hands represented. During the closing event of the pilot program, Emma stood before an audience of graduates and supporters, her voice steady and filled with emotion. "This isn't just about creating leaders," she said. "It's about showing women that they already have the strength within them. Our job is to remind them and to provide the tools they need to harness that power." The applause that followed was thunderous, but what truly moved Emma was the sight of the women embracing their certificates, their faces glowing with pride and hope. Back at the Serenity Mansion that night, Emma stood on the balcony, looking out at the garden where she had often sought refuge during her years of isolation. Gabriel joined her, carrying 2 cups of tea. "You've created something extraordinary," he said, handing her a cup. Emma smiled, her gaze remaining on the garden. "We both have, and it feels like this is just the beginning." Gabriel hesitated before speaking again. "Do you think we've finally found our balance?" Emma turned to him, her expression serene. "I think we're learning. It's not about perfection, Gabriel. It's about respecting each other's journey and supporting each other along the way." He nodded, understanding the depth of her words. As they stood there, the cool night air around them, it was clear that their relationship had transformed. The cracks that had once defined them were still there, but now they served as reminders of how far they had come, not as weaknesses, but as proof of their resilience. The global conference in Mexico City marked a turning point for Helping Hands. The recognition and connections Emma had fostered opened doors to new partnerships, bringing fresh resources and opportunities to the organization. What began as a local initiative had now become a beacon of hope and empowerment, touching lives across Mexico and beyond. Emma's days were a whirlwind of activity, leading new projects, mentoring emerging leaders, and speaking at events. Yet, despite the demands, she found herself more fulfilled than ever. She had discovered a balance between her work, her newfound independence, and her relationships. Gabriel, too, had embraced his transformation. Through Raíces Futuras, he rekindled his passion for innovation while giving back to communities. His foundation collaborated frequently with Helping Hands, merging their efforts to create even greater impact. Their lives, though distinct, intertwined in meaningful ways. Emma and Gabriel had learned to navigate their differences, supporting one another without compromising their individuality. One evening, after a particularly successful event celebrating Helping Hands' new milestone, Emma and Gabriel walked together through the illuminated garden of the Serenity Mansion. The atmosphere was calm, filled with the soft hum of night sounds and the glow of lanterns strung along the pathways. "I never imagined we'd end up here," Gabriel admitted, his voice reflective. Emma glanced at him, a faint smile on her lips. "Neither did I. But maybe that's the beauty of it. We didn't plan this, we rebuilt it." As they continued their stroll, Gabriel stopped near the greenhouse Emma had once tended alone, back when it was her sole sanctuary. "You've taught me so much, Emma," he said, his tone earnest, "about strength, about humility, about what it means to truly live. I spent so long trying to control everything, but now I see how much more powerful it is to let go and trust." Emma looked at him, her expression softening. "And you've shown me that people can change, if they truly want to. But what matters most, Gabriel, is that we've both found ourselves in the process." They stood there for a moment, surrounded by the life Emma had nurtured in the garden, a symbol of her resilience and growth. The following months were a continuation of their shared yet individual journeys. Emma's book continued to inspire, and Helping Hands expanded its reach into new territories. Gabriel's Raíces Futuras launched innovative programs, fostering creativity and opportunity among underserved youth. Their relationship evolved into a partnership of equals. The admiration and respect they shared became the foundation for a connection that was no longer about dominance or dependency, but mutual growth and understanding. In the end, they realized that their strength lay not in erasing the struggles of their past, but in learning from them. Together, they had transformed not only their lives, but also the lives of countless others, proving that even from the deepest shadows, a brighter future could emerge.